Welcome everyone to a presentation of this year's proposed budget for the 21-22 school years. My name is Casey Kasorik, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the school superintendent here in Hilton. And I'm joined with our assistant superintendent for business, Adam Geist. All the information that we'll be covering with you today will also be available on our website. So an outline of our presentation, today you will learn about the district's accomplishments and data benchmarks, different factors that have impacted the development of the budget, the 21-22 proposed budget and bus purchase, the election of board members, and the annual vote date of May 18th, 2021. District accomplishments include the district being recognized for the 8th straight year as a Rochester Top Workplace by the DNC. This year we received the Meaningful Work Award, and once again, for the second time, we were the #1 employer in the large business category. We also were an official community award first place winner through the Democrat Chronicle. We've had Golden Apple Award winners in our teaching staff, and 16 students earned WMOCO CTE endorsements. Additional district accomplishments include Student Council at Merton Williams led a food drive that collected over 5 shopping carts full of goods to be donated to the Hilton food shelf. This impacts families right here in the Hilton learning community. 35 students are candidates for the New York State Seal of Biliteracy. Mock Trial won the 2021 Monroe County Championship. Section 5's champions in the 55-meter dash, Dante Valiant, who's a senior. Section 5 champion in the pole vault, Laura Regal, an 11th grader. Section 5 girls champion in the shot put is Trinity Dees. And Section 5 Class A1 wrestling champion, Rocco Camalachi. Our Section 5 Class A champions in both the boys and girls bowling. Congratulations to them. And last but not least, rounding out of district accomplishments, we also have Section 5 boys swimming and diving champions. 200 individual medley, Jared Ensner. 50 freestyle, Justin Enzer. 100 butterfly, Jared Enzer. 200 free relay of Justin, Alex Morelli, Jacob Runyon, and Jared Enzer. And the 400 free relay of Justin Enzer, Alex Morelli, Jacob Runyon, and Jared Enzer.
We look at several benchmarks related to how our students are performing, as well as how we compare financially to other districts in the county. One of the benchmarks we look at are students earning a Regents diploma. Hilton students have performed very well in this area, with 99% of them earning a Regents diploma and 68% earning the advanced designation. So what do students do once they graduate from Hilton? Well, 85% of them elect to move on to higher education, with 66% attending a 4-year school and 19% attending a 2-year school. Those that don't elect to move on to college are either entering the workforce, are going to a trade or technical school, or entering the military. One of the financial benchmarks that we use is a cost per pupil. This is simply the total budget divided by the total number of students. For the 12th consecutive year in a row, we have the lowest per pupil in the county at $20,314 per student. That's well below the county average of $24,359 per student. There's a couple reasons for this. One of the reasons is our enrollment has been very stable, while many other districts have seen a decreasing enrollment. And then we also have very conservative budgeting practices where we don't have a lot of fund balance built into our budget. Another financial benchmark that we use is taxes paid. We typically fall between the 4th lowest and 10th lowest in taxes paid. There's a really tight cluster of districts that are in that area. This year we falling is the 8th lowest district in the county as far as taxes paid, with an amount of $2,220 based on a home valued at $125,000. That still is about $50 below the county average of $2,272. The district on the far right side of this chart will never get down that low in our taxes. They have a much different tax base than us. They're very, their tax base is made up of mainly businesses. You know, they have Marketplace Mall, car dealerships on every corner. So they have a much different tax base than we do. We are very much residential in nature and really don't have that same business tax base to keep our taxes lower. With that said, if you look to the far left of the graph, that district also has a very residential tax base very similar to us. The difference is we are still growing where they are fully developed. So we have a lot of new construction that again helps keep our taxes down. And we believe that the school district plays a large role in that, is that we are a destination district and families want to move into the Hilton School District because of the schools. Looking at the budget factors related to the development of the 21-22 budget, we really look at three main areas. We look at the tax levy. We try to be respectful to the taxpayers by keeping taxes low. We this year are going out at our property tax cap of 1.83%, which means our levy can grow by just over $747,000. The other area we look at is appropriated fund balance and reserves. This is what we in essence use. It's our savings account that we use to balance our budget. We are keeping it the same as last year. We were very fortunate to be able to do this. We certainly expected, due to additional expenses related to COVID, that we were going to have to use more of our savings in order to balance our budget. So we are pleased that we can at least maintain that with the ultimate goal of eventually weaning ourselves off the need to use our savings to balance our budget. And then the last thing that we look at is funding of new initiatives in good times or in not so good times financially, potentially having to go through reductions. So we do look at and align our new initiatives to the district's strategic plan. And we try to do that through reallocation of existing resources. If again, especially in tough times, that is the case, but in times where we are receiving additional aid, then we could look to just simply add something rather than reallocate something. And we do this and we prioritize it based off of keeping our students and staff safe, student achievement, and really the maintenance of our physical plant, especially through our capital projects. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So really the first big budget factor, and it's hard to believe that we've been dealing with the property tax cap for 10 years now. And often the media describes this as a 2% tax cap. It's actually a much more complex formula. It starts out with either 2% or the rate of inflation, whichever is lower. So unfortunately this year, the rate of inflation was only at 1.23%. So we have a much smaller base to our property tax cap. And then we have a whole bunch of things that either increases or decreases our property tax cap. And every school district goes through this calculation every year and has to submit the results to the New York State Comptroller. So if we look at the different components that makes up our tax cap and we can compare it to last year's, you can see that the rate of inflation for 2 years in a row now has been under the 2% mark. So last year we were at 1.81%. This year's rate is 1.23%. So again, a much smaller basic cap. We then have new construction. I mentioned earlier that we do believe we are a destination district. So we do have new homes that are being built in the area. This has remained fairly stable over the last several years. It's down slightly this year from 1.23% down to 1.03%, but still a really healthy gain overall. And then for the second year in a row, our capital levy or changes to our capital levy has decreased. It hasn't decreased as much. Last year, it brought us down about 1.25%. This year, it's brought us down about 0.47%. So it's really interesting. The overall cap actually came in almost the same at 1.79 last year to 1.83% this year. And we are going out to the cap of 1.83. So that means we only need a simple majority to pass the budget. If we were going above that cap, we would need what's called a supermajority, which means we would need at least 60% of the votes to come in supporting the budget. So for all 10 years, we have been either at or below our property tax cap. So there are some other factors, and you know, a lot of the times when we're talking about budget factors, they're tough, they're challenges to this. So this is an example of maybe some positive ones. So while it's never good to lose experience in the district, as far as employees that may have, you know, 25, 30 or 30 plus years in our district, we do have savings associated with replacing a higher paid, more experienced teacher with a newer, less experienced teacher. So we have savings associated with retirements in the district. And this year we have 29 retirements, and you can see 12 teachers, 15 support staff, and 2 administrators. So a little bit of a double-edged sword as far as positives and negatives to the districts there. The state budget was very positive for us this year, and really unexpected. We weren't anticipating on seeing such a big increase to state aid for school districts. Probably the largest, most unrestricted form of aid that we could receive is foundation aid. And our foundation aid was up almost $2.5 million with the commitment to fully fund that over the next 3 years. So that was a really positive for us as a school district. We have been underfunded in foundation aid for many years, and it's nice to get such a large increase in that to help us maintain our staffing in our programs for the upcoming budget year. We also have an increase in our building aid. This is related to our $32.25 million project, and I'll talk a little bit about that later on in the presentation. When the governor first put out his budget, he had looked to consolidate many of our expense-based aids, including our BOCES aid and a transportation aid, into a new services aid. That was rejected as part of the final budget, so that was another positive for us as we were able to maintain our current formulas for those expense-driven aids. We did learn through the budget process that our transportation aid was not going to be fully funded due to the pandemic. They kind of met us halfway. Originally, they said nothing was going to be funded. Then we had some expenses will be funded, but only through a certain point in the year. So we had to back off some of our transportation aid. So you'll see our overall aid, while our foundation aid is up almost 2.5 million, our overall aid is only up just over 2.1 million. And then the last, health insurance, which continues to be a big stressor on our budget. We are part of the Monroe County Healthcare Consortium. That does a couple things for us. Typically, we pay much less than a community rated plan, so we don't have as large of increases. And we also were able to introduce a new plan, and this has been around since 2018, and we're up to 148 employees and retirees that have elected to subscribe to that high deductible plan. And that's really a win-win. It's a win for our employees, hopefully saving them some money. And it's also a win for the district as it is a much lower cost plan for us. COVID-19 had a significant impact on our schools and our budget. We continue to ensure the safety of our students and staff. That included purchasing masks and hand sanitizer and thermometers, cleaning and disinfecting supplies. We purchased new upgraded air filters, just to name a few of the expenses related to COVID-19. We also had to purchase additional technology for both students and staff so that instruction could be delivered in a remote setting. And the proposed budget also includes additional supports to struggling students, both academically and social emotionally. I want to move into just a quick update on our capital projects. So I mentioned earlier that we saw an increase in our building aid. That is related to our $32.25 million capital project. This was passed by the voters in December of 2016. We broke it out into phase 1, phase 2, and phase 2B. Phase 1 included a roof replacement at the high school and relocation of the tennis courts. Both or all of that work has been completed. Phase 2, which was the west side of our district, was a work completed at Village Elementary School, Quest Elementary School, and Merton Williams Middle School. And all of that work has also been completed. And then phase 2B, which is almost complete. We're on the tail end of that. We have a couple things that we're working with the contractors on to button up, and we should be done before the end of this year, come June 30th. And that was some work that was completed at the Northwood Elementary School. as well as Hilton High School. Actually, in the picture here, you can see the newly renovated locker rooms at the high school. All three of those phases, so phase 1, phase 2, phase 2B, came in less than we anticipated. We actually have about $3 million worth of funds still available to us. So we are looking at a phase 3. We're hoping that we're going to be able to send what we're looking to have accomplished to SCD for their approval sometime in the month of May. We won't get a result from that most likely until November. So we would then go out to bid around the December-January timeframe and look to start the work and complete the work in the summer of 2022. So here's a first look at our 2021-22 projected expenditure budget. And I'll jump right down to the bottom line there, the total expenditures. And you can see that our projected expenses are coming in at $87,378,298. That's about a $2.9 million increase from our 2020-21 budget, or 3.45%. I won't go through all the different line items, but you could see the various changes. As you would expect, instruction's up about 1.3 million. In a school district budget, that's where most of our funds go, is to instruct our students. You can see that we had a slight increase in transportation, and then you can see the breakdown between our benefit categories, both those statutory benefits and the contractual benefits, which include the health insurance. So typically that health insurance line is a much larger increase, but we had a projected much lower increase than we've had in past years. The state also requires us to break down the budget into what's called a 3-part expenditure budget. It's broken into 3 components: the administrative component, the capital component, and the program component. And this just shows the comparison between the upcoming year and our current year. And as expected, the program side of the budget represents the largest portion at just over 3/4 of our total budget.
So when we're making decisions on how to utilize financing, sometimes we look at whether we have to make reductions or we're looking to make additions of programming and services. We anchor into the mission statement of the district and the vision, and also the strategic plan. So our framework for success is here, and we're really looking at focusing the funding at these areas. Budget changes for this year. There's a staffing adjustment. There will be a 1.0 FTE clerical stipend. What we're doing in this situation is we have a district clerk who is retiring, and we're looking to reallocate that work in a cost savings fashion. We don't have any other reductions in this area, and we do have some new additions and new initiatives. This includes calculators at Merton Williams in the high school. We've taken some time to build a replacement schedule, so we will be replacing fitness center equipment at Merton Williams, the weight room equipment at the high school, and athletic equipment district-wide.
So here's a look at the projected revenue budget. And again, if you drop right down to that last line, you can see that we are imbalanced. Our revenues equal our expenses. The overall budget, again, is $87,378,298. That same $2.9 million increase from last year, or 3.45%. I won't go through all of the different line items here, but I'll focus on a couple of them. The big one, again, is that state aid line. You can see that our state aid is up $2.1 million. That's really what allowed us to close our budget gap and to maintain all of our staffing and programs. Property taxes, we talked about a little bit earlier. We are going out at the property tax cap max, which you can see is at 1.83%, which increases our revenue by about $747,000. And then we had our savings, which are the last 3 lines. We didn't have any change associated with the appropriate fund balance. We had a change, not in the total amount that's coming from reserves, but in the mix between the reserves. So we have a decrease of $200,000 from a transfer from our retirement reserve, and an increase of $200,000 from our transfer from our debt service reserve. So this shows the history of our appropriated fund balance and reserve. So the blue line represents our reserves. The red portion represents our fund balance. And I like to bring this all the way back to the 2008-9 year. So that was right around the financial collapse, the Great Recession. And you could see that we had to really ramp up our usage of fund balance and reserves to balance our budget. And we hit the peak in the 11-12 year where we were at almost $2.5 million. And since then, we've had that goal of continuing to wean ourselves off of the usage of fund balance and reserves. And we were steadily able to decline. We had a little bit of a blip going into the 19-20 year. And as I said, we've been fortunate to weather the storm thus far through COVID, and we're able to keep our fund balance and reserve transfers flat. We fully expected that we were going to have to increase those in order to balance our budget, but the state aid really helped us with that respect. So we were able to keep that flat. So now we're going to get into the 21-22 projected tax rates. And these are projected rates. They will not become final until the board approves them in August. All of the town assessors have until July to submit their final numbers. So I've been in contact with all of the assessors at each of the 4 towns. So this is projected based on information at that point in time and could change as we before we get to approve them in August. So there's a lot going on here. So you can see I have a lot of changes in equalization rate. So Clarkson is going from 100% equalization down to 95%. Greece is the only town within our district that is staying at 100% equalization. Hamlin did not have a change this year, but they're remaining at 91% equalization. And the town of Parma is dropping from 97% to 93%. So you'll see on the next slide when I start talking about what that means for tax bills, if depending on where you live in the district, how the equalization rate comes into play there. But you could see that we are projecting a decrease in both Greece and Hamlin, and an increase in Clarkson and Parma, respectively. So really the bottom line on what people want to know is how is that going to impact my property tax bill? So if you own a $100,000 home in any one of the 4 towns within our district, you look at the equalization rate. So for instance, in Clarkson, that $100,000 home, if they have a 95% equalization rate, means that when you receive your tax bill, the assessed value is going to be based off of $95,000. So we projected the rate for Clarkson to be $23.34 per $1,000 of assessed value, which means that they would receive a tax bill of $2,217, which is a $50 decrease from the year before. If we look at Greece, Greece has a home that's valued at $100,000. They have a 100% equalization rate. So when they receive their tax bill, the assessed value will show $100,000. We projected their rate to be $22.17 per $1,000 of assessed value, generating a tax bill of $2,217. That same $50 decrease from the year before. So as you can see, it doesn't matter what town you live in, that equalization rate might change the projected tax rate, but the overall tax bill will be the same for a home that's valued at that $100,000. If we look at our history of our tax rate here at Hilton, you could see that we've been anywhere from the 4th lowest in the county up to this past year, we were the 8th. It was that really tight range that I was talking about earlier. We do see that we are projecting a 50-cent decrease on our tax rate. So we'll wait to see how that translates once all of the other districts have finalized their tax rates in August. Also on the ballot is our bus purchase proposition. So we replace buses that are 10 years old with typically between 100 and 140,000 miles. We drive about 1.5 million miles every year. Our district encompasses 70 square miles. We're transporting over 4,800 students every day, and there are over 400 bus routes covering 52 different schools and programs throughout the county. For this year, we are looking to spend just under $1.2 million on the replacement of 11 buses. We're looking to replace 7 large buses, 2 small buses, and 2 wheelchair buses. We do finance them over a 5-year period, and then we operate them for 10 years before we trade them in. And our first payment won't fall into the 21-22 budget. It won't take place until the 22-23 budget. And the cost of these buses are substantially covered by state aid at almost 85% of the overall cost.
If you choose to come out and vote, you'll not only be voting on a proposed spending plan and transportation, but you'll also be voting on Board of Education members. So recently, Mr. Tom Abbott and Mr. Russell Byer have decided not to rerun for their seats. So we have 2 available seats and we have 4 potential board members. So Chosante Witt, Ed Muscadri, Stephanie Sloan, and Kara Olds are seeking election to those 2 vacancies. You can learn more about them on May 10th. They meet the candidates at 7 p.m. in the Quest Auditorium. You can come in person and be social distance. The district will also be streaming that event live. If you are viewing this presentation after that date, it will be recorded and placed on our website. Voting guidelines. The vote will happen May 18th. Voter registration is required. You must be 18 years old and a resident of the district for at least 30 days. And voting is going to take place if you're a Greece resident at Northwood Elementary School, and all other residents of the district will be at the high school. Absentee ballots are available from the district clerk, and our voting hours are from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. on that 18th. And we're also going to continue to use the electronic voting machines. So in closing, I would ask that if you viewed this and you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Mr. Geist or myself and we will answer those for you. I want to recognize the Board of Education for all their work putting together this budget and all the stakeholder committees that included community input and staff input. We greatly appreciate it. Once again, I want to remind you that the vote is on May 18th, and that'll be from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. You'll be able to vote on the proposed budget, transportation proposition, and the board seats. And if you have, feel free to share the link to this meeting with anyone else who'd be interested. And all the information around the budget will be on our website. So I also want to thank Mr. Geist, our Assistant Superintendent for Business, for all of his efforts along with the business office in putting together this proposed budget. Thank you very much.